أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. We start with where do I start? Where to start? It's a very complex question. It's something that requires a very detailed answer. So what I've done is that I've tried to divide this whole process of where to start in 10 different steps. Now, once you follow these steps, you'll be able to find your way out. Obviously, these are 10 steps that can be divided into maybe 100. This is not an exhaustive list, and neither it is completely inclusive of everything. So what you can do is you can obviously divide it further. You think that this something can go on to step 7 and step 7 come on to step 4 or whatsoever it is. So you can do that. But this is my understanding, or this is what I used to do, or what I advise my students to do. The first and foremost part or step is you identify your area. So what is my area of research? My area is human resource management. Somebody might have marketing. Somebody might have finance, maybe project management. Anything else? Now, once I've identified this, then the second step is you look for your topic of interest. So my topic of interest in human resource management is leadership. Now, what is a topic of interest? This is a very important question. My area is human resource management, but if you ask me to explain compensation management, I'm really sorry, I might not even know the exact definition of it, because this is not my area of interest, or rather my topic of interest. If you ask me to explain recruitment and selection, I might not be able to talk about it for like maybe 10-15 minutes or more than 20 minutes. But if you ask me to talk about training and development, or if you ask me to talk about performance management, I can do it for maybe 10, 15, 20 hours even. This is something that is my topic of interest, something that I can speak of at length, something I can read about in like wherever I am. So what is your topic of interest? Something that you can talk about, something that you love reading about. So always try to find a good topic of interest for yourself, something that you want to read about, something that you want to write about, something that you want to talk about. Now, the next step is, once you have identified these two things, once you have identified and have gone through your step 1 and step 2, the next step is step 3. And from here on, your preliminary literature review search starts. And if you've studied the book by Uma Sakran, this is the first step: preliminary literature gathering, or preliminary literature review. So what is available in existing research? And here what I try to do is I look for systematic reviews, those systematic literature reviews that have been done. Now, why do I look for those? Because what they do is they summarize the whole of the research that has been done in the past 10, 15, or 20 years. So you do not have to go for and search 200, 300 papers. What you do is you get hold of that particular systematic review, and you look into that systematic review and find out, okay, this is what has been done, and they would have recommended certain step for the future. This could be done in the future. And what theories have been used in this particular topic? Now, this is the scariest part for early career researchers. Whenever we ask our students, go look for a theory that can explain the relationships, and then they do not have any clue what a theory means, where to look for it, and what does it do. So it's important that you look for systematic reviews. But even if you do not get any systematic reviews, that's not the end of the road. Now, before we go on, let me show you how do you look for systematic reviews. So we all have been using Google Scholar for long. Now, I use it in a very different way. I do not like just go on and type my topic. Let's say I'm interested in servant leadership and life satisfaction. Let's say this is something that I am interested in. So I do not just go into Google Scholar and just type in servant leadership and life satisfaction. No, this is not how I use Google Scholar. You have to use this professional software or website in a professional manner. My interest is servant leadership, and I'm looking into, let's say, a review that might have been done in the area of servant leadership. So how do I look into the review? How do I search for a review? Let's say I write servant leadership and then I write systematic literature review. And let's say if you've got a systematic literature review, well, yes, there is one. Servant leadership, a systematic literature review towards model and of antecedents and outcomes. So you can open this, and obviously if your university has got access, you can download this as well. There is another review as well, and that's by Nathan Eva. Here it is: servant leadership, a systematic review and call for future research. So let's see if we can download this paper and have a look what it does for us. Download. Obviously, if you do not have access, you will have to request the authors for the paper. Okay, now this is the paper: servant leadership, a systematic review and call for future research. Now, why do I like these systematic reviews? Here is a very potent reason for this, a very strong reason. Because they've got a summary of what has been done in terms of definitions, like how many definitions were proposed and how they were defined and what are the limitations of those definitions, and they would have proposed a new, more conclusive, more what do you call it, complete and concise definition like they did here, and they defined servant leadership. Now they identified the measures of servant leadership, what scales are available, and what are the limitations of those scales, what are the problems with those scales. Moving on, they identified the countries where this research has been done on servant leadership. Now you can locate your country. In case of Pakistan, there has been very little research, only 5 research studies. In case of, let's say, India, there has been 3. In case of, let's say, UAE, there is no UAE or the Arab countries. So if you are like in those countries, you can obviously look for and see that there has been very limited research. See, in Malaysia, in 2009, till 2009, there was no research at individual level. There was one multi-level research, but still you can't say that this is too much of a research. Now, another part is what theories have been used with servant leadership research. So you look for those specific theories that have been used with servant leadership, and what antecedents have been used with servant leadership, what outcomes have been used, what type of outcomes have been used. And again, this is how servant leadership has been used with behavioral outcomes. So you can look, okay, these are the behavioral outcomes that have been discussed, but there could be hundreds of others behavioral outcomes as well. So what you can do is you can look and identify other behavioral outcomes that have not been utilized. Instead of searching 7-8 databases, searching through 200 300 papers, here is one paper that gives you a clear idea of what has been done, and then you can easily locate your research at what could be done in the future. Now again, these are attitudinal outcomes, what has been done. Now this is something that let me download this paper and I'll rotate the view to discuss this. This is particularly important. Okay, this is a nomological network of what has been done on servant leadership. Now this is a clear framework of what has been done, what are the antecedents that have been taken with servant leadership, what mediators have been taken, what outcomes have been taken. Now what you can do is what moderators have been taken. But what you can do is you can use different mediators or moderators with different outcomes, something that has not been studied before. A particular mediator might not have been studied with trust in the leader, or maybe LMX, or maybe team efficacy. So you can change the mediators and propose your own models. Now, another important thing here is there have been very few studies on antecedents of servant leadership. Majority of the studies have looked into personality traits. An SLR will give you a much clearer picture. And again, it has to be latest. If it is not latest, obviously then it was published in 2019, so I will look into what has been done in 2020 and maybe in January or for the past 2 or 3 months in 2021. But still, I've got a clear picture as to what was done in the previous years. So this is the reason I'll go for SLRs. Let's say I'm doing knowledge management. So has there been an SLR on knowledge management? Yes, there has been one in 2016 and this one in 2018. Or you can say, let's say, there been any after 2021? So yes, in 2020 there has been on knowledge management one SLR, another one here. Let's say there is this paper published in Journal of Business Research, and this is a systematic review, so we can use this review as well. We can use these ones as well. So step 4. Now, sometimes what happens is, now we have located the topic, we've got the SLR, and we know what is available. The next step is, has the top journals in your field focused on the topic of your interest? Now, this is particularly important. Sometimes we try to look for something, a topic that we find very interesting, but something that your top journals might not find interesting. Recently, this happened to us. We wrote, I wrote actually one paper on university social responsibility, and I was lucky enough to publish it. But afterwards, I wrote another 2 papers on university social responsibility. And it's been 3 years I've been submitting it to journals, but it's getting rejected. Finally, I had to submit it to one of the papers to Emerging Social Sciences Citation Index, and the other one to another impact factor journal. And I'm glad we received a review and it wasn't rejected. So something that you think hasn't been researched on doesn't make it a topic worthy of research. A topic that is worthy of research will have a research in the past years. Something on which there is no research available for the past 2-3 years might not be a topic worthy of research. So do not waste your time on a topic that you find that, okay, there is no research on it. There could be a reason that there is no research on it because this is not worthy of research. Now the next step is, you have to start reading and store relevant information. Now this is very, very, very important. The problem that early scholars face, or what they lack, is they lack reading. You cannot write unless or until you are reading. And then again, reading should be from quality research papers, not from, for example, any XYZ journal that is not even recognized by their own country. So what are quality journals and how to find them? Since we all are business and management and social sciences scholars, for me it's 4 or 5 databases. It's Emerald, it's Science Direct, it's Sage, it's Wiley, it's Taylor and Francis, it's Springer, and if I'm not forgetting, you can use JSTOR as well. So these are 7-8. Okay, there are some others as well by Cambridge and Oxford. Obviously you can use them as well. I hope I'm not forgetting any. So, or to make it easier for you, anything that is in the master journal list is acceptable. So anything in master journal list, I'll share the link as well. masterjournalist.clarivate.com. So any journal here, it's of a good quality, it's double blind, peer reviewed, and the writing and the write up is all very good. So you can obviously look into the journal that you want to read from. If it's in there, use it and read from it. And try to read as much as possible. The more you read, the more you understand, the more you are able to reflect on how it should be written. The less you read, the less you know what should be written, the less you have the knowledge of the words that should be written. No matter how good you have done later in your paper will be desk rejected if it does not start with the right phrases, with the right sentences, with the right structure. And how do you know that it is right? How do I know that if it's right or wrong? The only way to know that it is right or wrong is to read how others write it. It's not called copying, or you're not benchmarking it. You are learning, and this is how learning is done. Now, moving on. So, and then you store relevant information. Now, there are two ways to do it. One is obviously you use Mendeley. So you create a folder here, you store your papers, and you can obviously open the papers and highlight what you want to like store. Another way is using Excel sheet. So you use an Excel sheet and store your relevant information in that Excel sheet. I'll share the Excel sheet with you a lot as well. For now, if someone is in a hurry to store information or write their research paper, they can use this Excel sheet where they can store the title, the objective, the research questions, the theory that has been used, the independent, dependent variables, the control variables, the mediators, the moderators, the gaps that that particular paper has addressed, the contribution that particular paper has made, the sample size, respondents, and from introduction to your final implication, a summary of everything from that particular paper could be added here. Okay, so once you are reading, you are storing relevant information, and these things complement each other. Do not, okay, another mistake that people make, they keep on reading things. They keep on reading, and they are not writing anything, and they are not storing any relevant information. So what happens is they start to forget. They start to forget where they read this particular thing. They start to forget how they read it, where they read it, and now what to do with it. Now sometimes all this reading get mixed, and they cannot like conclude from this particular reading, or the particular reading that they have done. They cannot conclude anything. So there's no point just reading things. Okay, sometimes a student comes to me, or there are PhD scholars who call me or email me. We have read 50 papers, and my question is, or my comment to them sometimes feel harsh. So what? So what have you done after reading 50 papers? I've read 50 papers. So what? There's no point reading papers when you cannot conclude them. So how do you conclude them? Either you start writing what you have read. A summary of every paper might be helpful, but for me, it's my own personal opinion. Storing relevant information in a structured manner is more important than just reading and summarizing the paper on a page or in a Word document. So you need to have a structured approach, because research is something that has to be structured. Otherwise, you won't be able to get anywhere. You should be able to identify where a particular information is located. Now, this is only done once you are reading. Once you are reading, you know what goes into the introduction. Once you are reading, you know what goes into the literature review. Once you are reading, you know what goes into the discussion. You then do not put things that are in the literature review into the introduction. So this is particularly important, that you should be able to identify where a particular information is located, so that you can directly jump onto that particular information, use it in your own paper. For instance, these days, if I'm writing a paper, or if I'm writing the literature review for my paper, or if I'm writing anything, maybe a revision for my paper, It takes me very little time to write those things. Reason being, I know where those things are located. Reason being, I use too much of Mendeley and I use too much of Google Scholar. So I use too much of the softwares because it's hard for me to read 200, 300 papers. It's obviously it's not easy for even maybe a Harvard professor. If you ask him, okay, you have to do a revision and you have to write a paper maybe in 6 months or 1 year, and you have to read 300, 400 papers. He might be or she might be concerned as well. And next thing is start proposing, start writing, start discussing with experts. So I've mixed 7, 8, 9 now. Do not be afraid to discuss your concepts with experts. Write to them. Now, a concern that is very legitimate, and I've come across this concern as well, especially in Indian subcontinent, in Pakistan, in India, because these are the most of the times I'm contacted by people in these areas. I'm not sure about Malaysia or other countries. Sometimes students are writing to us, we are afraid to discuss our idea with anyone because we think that it might be stolen. This is a very legitimate concern. So, what's the way out? Where shall we go and discuss? We can't discuss it with our fellow scholars, even because they do not have any idea, because they are just fellow scholars like us. So, what I normally recommend them is write to uh, esteemed or established professors, and then start writing your research. Start writing about something. If you plan to write about the introduction, or if you plan to write about the literature, start writing your literature and get it reviewed by experts. Do not be afraid to do it. And finally, do not be discouraged and take critique openly. You will be told that this is not something that is worth it. You will be told that this is not something that can get published, and you will be told this is not how you write. But do not get discouraged. Take it openly. So moving on. Where are my gaps? How do I search for my gaps? How do I identify the gaps in existing research? Where do I locate or look for the gaps? Now, I've already mentioned that you have to search latest research in good quality journals, or sorry, databases. There are two types of gaps. One is explicit research gap, the other is implicit research gap. Let's talk about explicit research gap. Explicit research gap is something that is already written, already available. Someone has conducted a research and they have mentioned that this is our research and future research could do this. Now, where is this? Now, I'm going to take an example of my own paper here. Let's say I found a latest research somewhere. Let's say I found this research paper and I'm interested in CSR and loyalty maybe. So I found this paper on corporate social responsibility and customer loyalty in the hotel industry. This particular paper, and I found the concept pretty interesting because this is a very latest research published in a very good journal. And while I'm reading through the paper, I find that there are very latest research gaps. And if I look into here, I find that there are very latest gaps, very latest references. Okay, this particular thing is very interesting and there are gaps as well. And when I look at the model, when I look at this model here, I see that, okay, this is a simple model to a certain extent, CSR, loyalty, and these are mediators. And I find this interesting. So I go into the limitations and future research directions of this study. Now I'm interested in using or taking this study forward and using this same model maybe and adding new mediators or moderators to improve this model for my own study. So how do I do this? So if I read through this, let's say the study has several limitations. First, the present study focused on only 3 countries. So this study focused on Pakistan, China, and Italy. To know the impact of CSR on customer-related outcomes in more depth, for future studies, other emerging and economically developed countries or countries with increased focus on the hotels should be analyzed. So for future studies, you can increase the sample to other countries as well. Now, second, the study was based on hypothesis using cross-sectional survey data. You can use longitudinal data, but I don't consider this as a very viable gap. And plus, doing longitudinal studies is pretty difficult with such variables. Now, future studies, okay, now moving on. Third, future studies could also ascertain the mediating role of other variables. This is something that I am interested in. This is something that can contribute to gaps in existing research. This is something that readers and the journals are interested in, testing in new relationships. But mark my words, this is not enough. Just putting in variables that have not been studied before is not enough. This is one misconception of early career scholars or even established researchers sometimes as well. Someone who has done PhD even think that, okay, I'm testing a new relationship. Why is my paper not getting published? So what are these variables that you can use? So you can use word of mouth, trust, and credibility. Additionally, although CR was affected by CSR and CI, it was found to be an insignificant mediator in the model. Therefore, future research shall include it as potential mediator to keep exploring its role in similar conceptual models. And fourth, there could be other moderating variables like market orientation, government policy, or culture. Now, let's say, based on these recommendations, I develop my own model. How do I do this? Just hold on. What that paper recommended was, it recommended that, okay, we can have these three as mediators between CSR and loyalty. So let's say CSR, these three as mediators, and then we've got loyalty. So let's say this is your model now. So these three as your mediators, and this is your IV, this is your DV. You take this model to your supervisor, he or she approves it, you start collecting the data, you write your paper, you analyze it, all things are done, you submit your paper to a journal and your paper is rejected. Why? Because there is a comment that this relationship or this study has already been done 6 months ago by these authors. So you are in trouble. Your paper didn't get published, but that publication was the requirement of your degree. So what would you do? Where is my fault? I took a gap from existing research and I did my research. But the problem is you only focused on one single paper for your gap. So what's the solution? The solution is that you look for other papers that have talked about these variables. You look for other mediators that could be part between CSR and loyalty. Do not just take all the mediators from one particular paper. Look for other papers as well. Now, where do I find these other papers? I've mentioned those databases, but I haven't got time looking into every single one of them. But let's do the easy way. Let's say I'll write all in title. Now these are ways through which you can use Google Scholar for search. All in title means if you are looking for specific concepts on which papers have been published, and those concepts must appear in the title of the paper. And if you are looking for multiple concepts, so you write all in title. Okay, so I'm looking for all in title, and my focus is corporate social responsibility and loyalty, because I'm looking for mediators between corporate social responsibility and loyalty. Corporate social responsibility is one single phrase, and loyalty. So now what you see is, since 2020, obviously gaps should be from latest papers. Since 2020, here are the papers, few papers that have used CSR and loyalty. So papers published in CSR and loyalty. Here are all the papers in Google Scholar that have got loyalty and corporate social responsibility in their title. Now this is our paper, and obviously we've taken the gaps from this particular paper, so there's no need to open this paper. Let's see if we can find any other paper that have talked about or discussed certain mediators, certain other mediators as well that we can use. Let's say we can use this as well. But now your problem could be that obviously your focus is on hotel sector, so you're looking for mediators that have not been discussed or should be discussed in case of hotel industry. Yes, obviously you can look for that as well, but you can look for general mediators as well and see if they are applicable to the hoteling industry as well, if you are working in the hotel industry. Let's say I like this paper. Let's open this and let's see if they've recommended any mediators as well. Well, there is this paper as well. Let's see if they have recommended any mediator as well. So there are other papers as well. Let's use one or two just to clarify how it should be done. So you open the PDF. Okay, here is one. And let's see their model and let's see their recommendations. Okay, here is their model, CSR loyalty, and they have taken identification and trust as mediator. And let's see their future research directions or recommendations. Okay, here it is. The present work is not free of limitations. This study tests hypothesis in telecommunication sector in Greece. Obviously, they are recommended they are recommending other countries as well, or other contexts as well. Okay, CSR, they are looking for obviously some other dimensions of CSR. Let's see if they are recommended any mediators, because for right now, we are looking into mediators. We are looking into whether there are certain mediators that can be used as well or not. Okay, they are saying that, okay, loyalty construct like behavioral and attitudinal facets can be used separately. Okay, they are not recommending any mediators. But the interesting part is, in this paper that I showed you, we used behavioral loyalty. This paper, this was focused on behavioral loyalty. But there are other forms of loyalty as well. So what you can do is you can improve your model like this. Let's say I'll use attitudinal loyalty and behavioral loyalty, right? And let's say we did open the other paper as well, and let's say if they have got recommended, or if they have recommended a mediator as well or not. So where are these mediators? Where are these gaps? They are in the limitations and future research directions. And let's see their model, CSR and customer loyalty, and they have taken service quality and trust as mediators. Okay, limitations and see, they have asked about cultural dimensions as potential moderators. So they haven't asked for mediators, but they have identified moderators. Cultural dimensions. See, they have recommended other mediators as well. This is their recommendation for mediators. Engagement, value co-creation. So let me copy this. Let me put this. So I've taken this gap from one paper. Okay. So let me put one thing here. So one gap is coming from CSR loyalty by Latif et al. The second is coming from this paper here, where I'm shaping loyalty as with two dimensions, Glavelli 2020. And the third gap is where they have referenced or provided different mediators. So let's say I change it rather than using word of mouth, and mind you, word of mouth is a dimension of loyalty as well. In one of the paper, it is a dimension of loyalty. So I read it somewhere. So let me remove this. Why should I keep this here? Because this could be an issue later when my paper is getting reviewed. So let's say I use customer experience, and let's say I use value co-creation. And these two mediators have come from this particular paper, which is written by Raza 2020. Now your gaps are not coming from a single paper, this one. Your gaps are coming from multiple papers. You have located existing research, latest research. All these papers are from 2020, very latest research. And based on those, you have proposed your model. So this is how you can use existing research to propose your models. And I strongly recommend all my scholars that try to locate gaps from at least 3 to 4 papers. Once you do that, you are in a very safe position. Now, the other form of gap is implicit gap, something that is not mentioned, something that is not available. And how do you get to implicit gaps when there is not when it is not available? Now, the answer is when you are reading on a particular topic and when you are focused on a particular topic for 3-4 years, 5 years, maybe 2 years, maybe 1 year even, but you have read a lot about it, gaps will come to your mind. This is done. You will have gaps in your mind that, okay, I've been searching but I couldn't find something related to this. Let's say here is one paper that we published. Here is one paper that we published in 2020, January 2020. And the base of the paper was that there was an existing research on entrepreneurial orientation and project success. There was a research on entrepreneurial orientation and project success published in International Journal of Project Management. And at that time, I was reading another paper by Renko on entrepreneurial leadership. So I thought that, okay, there has been a research on entrepreneurial orientation and project success. Is there a research on entrepreneurial leadership and project success? So I started searching. When I started searching, I couldn't find any. And that was way back. But obviously now you will find my research or maybe another one. So I searched for entrepreneurial leadership and project success. So at that time when I searched, I couldn't find much research. And these two papers that you are looking at are my own papers. Both of them are my own. Still, there is no research on entrepreneurial leadership and project success, apart from my own one single study. Even if you go to any time, there is no research. How do I got this idea that, okay, this is something that I should research on? Because I knew there is a form of leadership, entrepreneurial leadership. Leadership is my area of interest. I know different kinds of leadership. So I've worked on servant leadership, I've worked on entrepreneurial leadership, I've worked on knowledge-oriented leadership. So I knew that, okay, this is a form of leadership. So I searched through whether there is a study on entrepreneurial leadership and project success. Way back in 2019, I couldn't find any. So I couldn't find that particular research. But I knew that entrepreneurial leadership is a form of leadership. So I searched and I couldn't find it. Moving on, I also searched whether entrepreneurial leadership has been linked with in any way with knowledge management. No, there hasn't been any study apart from this, but this obviously doesn't look like it's a published article or anything. Again, there wasn't any study. So this is how you look for implicit gaps. You know, after reading through the literature, you know the concepts, and you want to look whether these concepts have been interrelated with each other. and you search through it and you can't find it. So this is how you propose your implicit gaps. Okay, I've been searching on the net and there hasn't been any research on these particular concepts or how these particular concepts are related. I think I did mention it in the introduction. See, so I've mentioned it in the contribution as well, that this is the first study. But again, it is important that you just don't write that this is the first study. What if your reviewer finds tens of studies on the same topic? You have to prove that there is no study. How do you prove? First, you search yourself using these commands in Google Scholar or those databases, search for those databases. And then when you are expressing your gaps, obviously we'll be reading one or two introductions as to how to write about gaps. And then on those gaps, based on those gaps, obviously we are writing about the contributions. Okay, so this is how you write or search for implicit gaps, something that is not available in the literature, but you know the concepts and you know that these concepts are in their early research. There hasn't been much work on these concepts lately. Okay, so this is how you search for your implicit gaps. Now, once you have identified the gaps, maybe implicit, maybe explicit, you have identified how your model will look like, and you have given it a pictorial view. In this case, obviously, you can draw those boxes and put these variables as labels in there. And once now you are ready with the model, you know you from where you have taken your gaps, everything is ready. You present it to your supervisor, he or she likes it, that okay, the initial idea is workable, just read on it, maybe it can be improved further.